No, hello everyone. I'm Nick Courts. I'm an environmental advisor and GIS officer for Anglo Gold Ashanti. Before I get stuck in, I'd like to say that I am ADHD autistic. I may not make eye contact and I may go off on tangents. I will rely on my notes because otherwise it can go very, very off peak very quickly. When I started GIS, it was only probably 2 years ago that I actually got introduced to it with no training. Work was pretty much just getting us to use it for sort of flora fauna mapping, weed mapping, and unfortunately Anglo Gold like to subject people to, or at the time was subjecting people to what I think is one of the biggest forms of torture, map info. Absolute trash, and I was very vocal on it. And so it sort of fell into place that my hatred of map info ended up getting me nominated to be the GIS officer for Anglo's move to QGIS. We went ahead and we did exactly what we should have done, and we binned it. And it was one of the best moves we've made. We saved a lot of money by doing so, and I think that actually it's really kicked off over the last year. So the other part of this was that my manager Rose had noticed that when I was doing GIS work, it actually was helping me with a lot of the issues I was having. Like usually I'm very energetic, unfocused, and with the GIS stuff, it was really helping me focus and engage, and I was really actually quite enjoying it. And so it was part of the reason why she nominated me for the role when one of the other GIS people had gone on mat leave. She said they actually worked quite well with helping me balance and switch off from having my internal debate between being extroverted and hyperactive and at the same time arguing with wanting to be ordered and methodical and introverted, and I was just able to switch off. So the Golden Dawn, as I called it, is we've actually named most of the eras with Anglo's GIS. There is actually quite a time frame of them. But QGIS made a massive difference to us, and I think the main positive that we got was that map info was really hard to teach to anybody who was new and joining the company. So I'd had very little training, one session with John, and the rest of it was just self-taught, and everything in the slideshow that I'll cover was pretty much just learnt online, which I think is just one of the real big sellers of it. It's simple to use. We managed to get everybody on board with the shift across. I think the only difficulty was the dinosaurs in the Expo geology department. They really hate change almost as much as I do, but we got there. Free, obviously we all know that that's free. Some of the apps you can use with it have subscription fees, but a lot less than what we were paying for map info. Compatible, obviously we use SQL into it, merging maps into it, very easy for TIFFs for a vendor. Quite complex. I quite enjoy the breadth of what you can do with it, and there's always something new that I'm learning or a new way of solving a tricky situation. And adaptable, all the plugins that come out, there's always new ones being released, and there's so many out there to help you with what you need to do. So started doing that for work. Quite enjoyed it, and then started realising that it actually fell into other parts of my life. So one of them is fairly new, so I'm not going to talk much about what we do because it's something that I haven't actually had a lot of time with. I used to be a bush firefighter volunteer, and when I moved to South Perth, I had to drop it. And it turned out that MAPS WA was just around the corner, and they're a volunteer fire and emergency service group who are spatial professionals, not all of them, but spatial professionals who actually use their GIS skills to help DFES with fire mapping, cyclones, land search and rescue. So I thought I'd put that in there in case anyone else is interested, because it's definitely a group that's hard working, and I'm hoping that this year I can put more time into it. But I know that David's going to be talking about bushfire mapping, so I won't go into it. The next slide I'll show you isn't related to GIS, but it links to where, and it has actually affected another part of my life. So See Your Folks is a website that you can access, and you put in a whole heap of different bits of information. It actually tells you how many times you'll see your parents from when you leave home. And this number is shocking, and it's the reason why I changed a couple of things in my life, because from the ages of 0 to 18, you spend 6,500 days. And for me, from leaving home, that's how many days I'd see them. So it's a bit of a shock. So anyway, they recently retired, and one of the groups that they got involved in to fill their time is a group called WANOSC. So we're an orchid conservation and research group. And they found it just for a good output in life. I went along once or twice just to join them and realised that a lot of the people in the groups were still using like sort of just writing down GPS coordinates on paper, putting them into an Excel spreadsheet, and a lot of it was just sort of guessing where locations could be. So over the last few months anyway, I've definitely started helping pick up, and we're hoping to move to at least them using a vendor with target locations so we can help try and find new populations, increase our knowledge of some of the threatened, critically endangered and just general orchids. So I'll show a few pictures of, oh, hello. So yeah, just a couple of pictures of some of these are critically endangered, some of them threatened, but yeah, we're trying to move up so that we can start storing the data a bit better, create a few different workspaces for them to actually be able to use, and yeah, move the data from Excel into a spatial system. To do that, I have found this is probably my favourite app of the last year, and that's merging maps. I've started using this for on-site work, inspections, environmental inspections, GDPs, clearing permits, but also with the orchid group. And I think that it's so powerful as an app that it can join into QGIS. We've used pretty much all free to source data so far. Geology, veg type, weather, elevation, anything that we can get, and being able to use the app whilst in the field to turn on and off those layers and also record our new locations has made it so easy to bring it back into QGIS and back into our layers and database. I think that app is very underrated by a lot of people who I've spoken to. Like, they're still wanting to use like a vendor because it's free. But I think if you're a big sort of like mining companies, especially this year, I think they're going to be definitely looking at moving Anglo into merging. It's one of our projects because we can just change everything in the field, which we couldn't do before. It was very manual and very tedious. So later, this has only, like I say, been my first year. I'm only working through it, but I've started using FME. So this, again, was self-taught. It's only a third of the size of the actual workspace I'm using. I was really hoping to show the HTML files that I've been generating, because we use this now for our clearing permits and disturbance on site. It actually spits out a full report showing us any areas that we need to avoid, threatened flora, fauna, heritage. And I was really hoping to show that, but obviously I can't for confidentiality conditions with work. But yeah, so I found this really easy to use as well. Again, it was something that was quite daunting to begin with, but I managed to work it, and I was quite proud of that when it ended up finishing. So my future aims, my secondment comes to an end at the end of May, because I am only seconded into the GIS team, so I'm hoping that in the next year I can find something casual outside of work to put my GIS time to, apart from Maps WA and my orchid group. I want to do a bit more on remote sensing and the web mapping, because I haven't really had a chance to do that this year, and increase my knowledge of some of these spatial softwares, because it's only really skimmed the surface so far. So to round out, this slide is something that I told my friend I would always include if I presented, and it's just one on mental health. Everyone here has something in common. We all like mapping, we all like GIS. So, or at the end of the night, maybe speak to someone you haven't spoken to before, you might make a new friend. And yeah, mental health's important every day, not just 1 or 2 days a year. Thanks for that.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Does anyone have any questions for Nick?
Oh, sorry, yeah. I didn't realise there was questions.
Yeah, there's questions. There's lots of time for questions.
Does map info still exist?
Oh, we have one license, and it's only because I think all of the symbology and stuff that's embedded in map info, and we have to try and change the format from, I think it's native X or the extended tab back to one that can actually work with someone else. But we have one license, and it makes me sick that we do actually have it. It's a horrible system, and I'll always say that. If you use it, get rid of it.
Can you explain what FME is? Is it like a block coding thing for QGIS?
Framework.
It's someone else might be better suited for this one. I know that it can basically take data, it can manipulate it, and it can provide a different output.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I can't speak for recent usage, but first time I became aware of it was literally about 25 years ago. It's called the Feature Manipulation Engine, I believe.
Yes.
And it's actually GDAL and what's the other one? OGR. So GDAL, Geographic Data Abstraction Library, and which is the raster conversion tool. And I think it's OGR, which I've got no idea what it stands for, but that's for vectors. They're both written by Frank Warmerdam, and so I'm guessing many of you will be familiar with those two tools. And yeah, FME, as far as I understand, is basically been built over the top of those two pieces of software. Yeah.
So this example here is just one input shape, which is whatever the clearing team want to put in. Reprojector. These ones here are all different layers, heritage, flora, fauna. A bit blurry, I was hoping it'd be a bit clearer. Again, reprojectors, then they all clip. Some of them export the clip files because we need to hold on to those. Then it goes into like area calculators and then HTML report generators and orderers, and that spits out one HTML report, which can be saved and viewed online.
Cool. You have to pay commercial license for it.
This one is, I think we, Anglo, pay for the use of FME, but very powerful. Like we have a lot of our workspaces automated, and a lot of our layers, so like tenements, which we were talking about earlier, we have FME that brings them down from the website each day and will upload and will override the day before. So if there's been any daily changes, they're captured every day at midnight.
Nice, that's better than me dragging and dropping the same package into QGIS.
I'm actually really curious about that diagram. It looks a lot like the output from GraphViz.
I just designed it that way. I just ordered it because I wanted everything of the same to be under each other.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about the underlying software that used to create it, or is that just kind of using mind mapping tools or something like that?
Any more questions? Warren?
Hey, really love how you bring GIS out of work. Just wondering, how do we get involved with BFES and ORCID group?
Oh, so the conservation groups for flora, there's many of them. There's too many species to have one broad group. So with those, you can just find like groups online. Like most of the people who are members of WANOSC are retirees who just do it for a bit of fun on their weekends or days off, really. They'll go out and just do their own surveys. It's a DBCA affiliated group. So DBCA does have lists of all those different groups. So those ones are definitely people you can reach out to and try to just join. Usually they're open to anything that any member can bring, especially if it's new. The Maps WA DFES website, I believe, has some contact information on that. But again, if you want more, I can probably send you the email address of some of the people there.
I got time for one more.
Sorry, you were saying the walker data that you collect with some interaction with the BCA. Is any of the data that you collect pushed back and from other agents or from other organisations as well, fed back into the BCA for things like their threatened
Yes.
communities, data sets?
Yeah, so with that, all the data that I've used so far has been stuff I can grab freely. I've not received anything from DBCA to date. We're hoping that will change now that there's a few more people pushing it. with our surveys, anything that is threatened, critically endangered, any of those, we do have a liaison officer between the two and a conservation officer. Everything goes back to DBCA for their records, and all of our surveys, especially of the threatened, critically endangered, any of the listed, they have to be approved by whoever the DBCA regions coordinator is. So yeah, it all goes back to them, but that's one of the positives that we get out of it. I think we've had a few that have been delisted because they found such a large number. It just helps with the, and I think genetic testing is now happening with some of them. So, yeah. Awesome.
All right,
Thanks,
thanks
Zach.
again, Nick.